so many things have come together to make me want to have this conversation with you about the music industry today. Um, and I like that you're Gen X because it's like pre-internet, post. Now we have the internet and what that
Yep.
has done to the music world with social media and uh, yeah. I just think in general that has, and I'll let you share as much as you want about this, but just the immediacy, the fact that you can get an audience streaming versus albums or versus physical media, but now with AI, right? So that just explodes what had already been kind of a disrupted industry because of the internet. So
Right.
plus there's just some like insider, um, behind the scenes look as to what it's like to work in the industry that people only get whispers of here and there. Maybe they hear
Sure.
the most scandalous stuff like, oh, P Diddy, blah blah blah. But
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you were a regular songwriter in Nashville, and so
yeah.
to give us a peek of that, a peek behind that curtain, I think is going to be pretty cool as well. Like I don't know, can you kind of give us a little bit about you
Sure.
and kind of growing up in that era, and then yeah, I don't know. I
Yeah,
know it's a lot, but just start chatting and we'll just go from there.
it is, and honestly, there's about 1,000 ways you could go with that. We could be here all
Mm-hmm.
night. No problem with that. But yeah, no, this is of course opinion, and I want to make that very clear because different people are gonna, feel differently about things. So I'm just coming from my perspective and not trying to
Yeah.
make a judgment call on what other people enjoy. But I feel like I very much grew up in a golden era of music, and I'm sure everyone says that. Everyone says that, like, well, my era was the best era for music. Everybody feels that way. But I really do feel like the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s were just an unbelievable time. I love all those eras. I think they all have something amazing to offer. Usually people kind of like have a decade that they really like,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm more like a 3 to 4 decade person. Even though I was, a kid growing up really in the 80s. I mean, the 80s is technically my era, but I love the 70s. I mean, I was a huge Zeppelin
Mm-hmm.
guy, even though by the time I was old enough to know who they were done. But I didn't care. I thought they were amazing. I thought the Beatles were great, all that stuff. Even when it went from the switch from 80s rock to 90s, I love that era too. I thought
Mm-hmm.
grunge was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Even post grunge was great. There was a lot of amazing bands that came out in that time. It really wasn't until about the mid 2000s that it started to kind of fall off for me. And, you know, all art is really made, I shouldn't say all art, a lot of entertainment is made for young people.
Mm-hmm.
And there's kind of a window. And as far as I know, this is still true in the music industry, but they target 13 to 25.
Mm-hmm.
And if I look at, the time period of about the time I stopped being interested in contemporary, not all, but contemporary pop music for to use a broad term, was right about 25. So they've got you pegged pretty good, and the reason they do that, not so much anymore, but back in the day, the reason they did that is because they knew that young people were in their formative years, and so they're very impressionable, and they knew they had a lot of disposable time and disposable income. So 13 to 25 is their target age range
Mm-hmm.
because that's who they sell CDs to back when people bought CDs. And that's who they sell concert tickets to and t-shirts and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Once you hit about 25, then you're entering your professional life. Maybe you're getting married, maybe you're buying a house, maybe you're having kids. You don't have time for that stuff. You're not sitting there,
Mm-hmm.
reading the latest Green Day lyrics and memorizing them and sitting there and talking to your friends on the phone for 3 hours about how much you love this song and blah 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 blah. So that's why they target that demographic. And I think in a lot of ways they still do. I'm a little out of the loop on that stuff, but obviously people aren't buying CDs anymore. But they do still buy T-shirts and they do still go to
Mm-hmm.
concerts and they do still listen to the radio. Believe it or not, I learned that the other day. This statistically, it is radio is still the majority of where people listen to music. You wouldn't think, right? Like you would think it would be Spotify and stuff like that, but apparently not.
Well,
I'm sure my
there's a lot of boomers and a lot of Gen
Yeah,
Xers who
yeah, yeah.
still love the radio.
Exactly. I was just going to say, I'm sure our generation and the boomers skew that statistic greatly. But even so, I think a lot of young people do still listen to the radio. I might be wrong about that. But anyways, so yeah, it's as you noted, there's it's sort of a generational thing, and our generation is kind of interesting in that we grew up in this analog world, and then we went to the digital world, and so we were at the time young enough to be before the internet and cell phones and all that stuff, but also we weren't like so old that it was difficult for us to transition. So we
Mm-hmm.
kind of had our foot in both worlds. And it's been really interesting. And as you've noted, it's been incredibly disruptive. And technology always is, like it always has been.
Yeah.
And when we first started talking about this interview, I started thinking about it, actually thinking about it a lot. And I was, just kind of going through things in my head. And I'm like, it's always been difficult. Imagine living in a time when people did things by candlelight and then electricity comes along. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that must have been mind blowing for those people, just like, oh my God, and everything just changed overnight. And it's kind of the same thing for us. It's like we were at the very beginning of the internet era and we're like, okay, this seems kind of cool. I'm not sure what you're going to do with it. And look at where we are today, and
If
who
I
knew that go ahead.
well, I think the difference between technology that came before and technology now is that we hear the word a lot now, disrupt. We're
Yeah.
going to disrupt the taxi world with Uber. We're
Yep.
going to disrupt the TV networks with YouTube, etc.
Yeah.
We're going to disrupt news with blogs or individual little websites. So or with social media. So whereas before electricity, I guess you could say that might have disrupted acoustic instruments. But most technology that came, whether it's electricity, whether it's the synthesizer, it seemed to largely enhance.
Sure.
Like it added to, like, oh, now we can do this, we can add it to. So before we could only do that, now we can do that and this. And now it feels like the technology is, at least right now, disruptive. And I actually believe in time it's going to be a huge addition, and we can get to that later on with even AI, and I believe AI is going to really help the music industry in time. But right now, it and aspects of the internet are disruptive, and I think people would have generally agree with that if they look at how the music scene was in the 90s versus the music scene today. If you took a time machine from 1995 to 2025 in those 30 years, like before and after, like, can you sort of make some observations about that, especially perhaps for people who were born in the 21st century who don't know anything about the 90s?
Sure. Yeah, it's and it's kind of a challenge because there's so many angles I could take on that. But like when you're talking like early '90s or mid '90s, in many ways we were still very closed off because now it's like you've got the internet and it's so easy to communicate and all the knowledge is out there. Like if you look, and you don't even have to look hard, you can find anything you want. We didn't have that in the '90s. It just didn't
Right.
exist. It's like if you wanted to know something about the music industry, you had to know a person that was in it. And if you didn't know a person in it, then you should move to Los Angeles or Nashville. Like those were kind of generally known, or maybe Seattle or whatever. And so like for me, like I didn't know anybody. I had no idea, and I didn't know how to know anybody. Like I didn't know who to talk to or how to even acquire any of that knowledge. So when the internet came along, it made it a lot easier to learn things about other
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And now, like if you come to today, there is just a wealth of information out there.
Mm-hmm.
And there's 1,000 ways you can get your name out there. However, that does not mean it is any easier now than it's ever been. I think in some ways it's harder, actually, because it's been demonetized so heavily. So it's like on the one hand, like everybody has like just like so many more ways that you can become successful. There's so many
Mm-hmm.
more ways to be successful, but that has opened the door for everybody who wants to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So now everybody is trying, you know. So whereas is back in the day there was a lot of especially monetarily there was lots of doors that were closed because like you had to be someone who was willing to say, okay, I'm going to move to Los Angeles, or I'm going to move to Seattle, I'm going to move to New York, and I'm going to start a band, and I'm going to become successful. That is daunting. That is very daunting, and very few people are willing to do that. Very few, really. I mean, you got to be like so committed, it's not even funny. Whereas today, someone gets it in their head, they're like, oh, maybe I want to be a musician. You don't have to like uproot your whole life. Like you can put music on YouTube. I mean, this is you and I talked a little bit about this. Like this is the Justin Bieber model,
Hmm.
right? This is the Taylor Swift model, where you've got like people online. You just put your songs on there and say, what do you think? You've got this worldwide community
Yeah.
that will give you feedback, and if they love you, like Justin Bieber and Taylor Swift, like the industry will come to you. They'll be like,
Mm.
hey, yeah, we got a deal for you. Like you've got a following here, right? You've got people interested in you. Well, it's a lot easier to say, I'm willing to go on tour when you've already got people who
Yeah.
like you and what you do, and you've got
Yeah.
business people coming to you. You're not
Hmm.
going to them, you know. Um,
Yeah, it's not as much of a risk. Like, oh, I'm gonna book this bar is gonna pay me to go and play there, or this
right.
venue is gonna pay me to go and play there. But there's no real risk about it being a bust because you already have a gazillion followers online.
But bear in mind, again, as with everything, we see the most successful people. You don't see the 100,000 that don't
That's
make it.
true.
Because there's people that write songs, and it's not like other industries. Like if you go to med school and you pass med school, you're going to be a doctor.
Yeah.
But you can be an incredible artist of any sort, not just music. You can be an incredible artist and get absolutely nowhere. Some of
Yeah.
it is right place, right time. Some of it is marketing. Some of it age, huge, huge, huge factor. Huge factor. Like you don't want to be starting this when you're 30. Like you're not going to get anywhere for the most
Hmm.
part. I mean, there's
Oh,
exceptions
that
to that.
makes
I
me
do
feel
know
old.
I know some exceptions, but very few, very few. I
Yeah.
can name exceptions, but yeah,
But
I'll give you a funny anecdote. I don't mean to interrupt you. Let me tell you my anecdote real quick. You'll be amused by this. So, as you noted, I did spend some time in Nashville, and that was one of the things I did when I started learning about the music industry. It was like, oh, Nashville's a hub. Okay. Oh, well,
mm,
they only do country music. Actually, no, not true. Country is predominant there for sure. It's the primary, but they do everything. There's rock, there's blues, there's jazz, there's everything there, and it's a great town. It's a beautiful town. I love it there. People are super nice. The music scene's incredible. Some of the best musicians you'll ever meet in your life. Blow your mind. Um, but I went there and I started doing these workshops for songwriting because I realized pretty early on I didn't want to tour. I was like, I don't want to do that. But I love
did you
writing.
have a
Right?
band, and how old were you? Like,
What
give us
I
an
played
idea
with
of
a
where you
friend's
were with
band
life.
Yeah, I played with a friend's band in college, and then
Hmm.
our mutual acquaintance Shane. I met him in music school, and our mentor was a guy named Mike Elliott, incredible musician, and he had a studio in Nashville for years. So I had finally met my guy. It's like, oh my God, I finally met a music industry insider. Like this is a dude that has worked with every country star you can think of. I mean, Faith Hill, Garth Brooks, all of them. Like he
Hmm.
has worked with them. And so it's like I got to pick his brain. It's like because he actually knew things, and he had done the songwriting thing. He had done commercials, TV commercials. He had done jingles. He had done TV for music for film and TV, all that stuff. So I learned a lot from that guy. He was my connection and my source. And I went down there and started spending time there. So I did this music workshop, and it was a big deal at the time for me
You took
because
it
it
or you
was
taught it?
I took it. I'll explain to you what it is. It was basically you got to pitch your songs to all of the major publishers in Nashville, which might not sound like a big deal. I assure you, it was a big deal. I was very excited about this. That is not something that you get access to very often. It's very hard to do that. The VP of A&R from Warner Brothers was there to give you an idea. Like you don't get to meet that person. So I was pretty excited about this. And it was something you had to try out for. You couldn't just show up. Like you had to submit your songs and like you
Hmm.
had to be chosen. So they had like 20, 30 people there. Now, just because they listen to your song doesn't mean they're going to take your song. Okay. It doesn't mean that. It just means you get the chance to show it to them. So we went there, and I'll make a long story short. But it was very overwhelmingly it was middle-aged people, like I shouldn't say middle-aged, but 30 to 50-year-old songwriters. In other words, people who are well past their prime for what the industry wants in terms of artists. And I should touch on that for a minute. What the industry wants for artists is they want young singer-songwriters, always. That is the number one thing always. Young singer-songwriters. As far as I know, that hasn't changed, and I doubt it ever will. Because they want you to be young, because then you're going to appeal to young people. Young people don't, you know, most young people will not be like, oh, there's some 50-year-old dude, I'm going to listen to him. They want people that are roughly their age or slightly older, So think about your favorite musicians, right, from when you were a kid, roughly your age or slightly older, right? I mean, maybe they're 10, 15 years older, or if it's a legacy band, like Zeppelin or whatever. But usually that's the target market. And so we were all basically just there to like pitch our songs to publishers. Well, there was one person there who was 16. And man, it was like the rest of us didn't exist. Like they only had eyes for this kid. And this kid is sitting there, no joke, he's got his feet up on the table. He's got his feet up on the table and he's on his phone just tapping away. The level of disrespect was unbelievable. Like this kid is sitting in front of like the like top industry people and just like acting like, they weren't there, which was funny because those people were acting like the rest of us weren't there. And they just had eyes for this kid because, he was young. He's a handsome guy. He was a singer-songwriter. It was everything that they wanted, but he also was just like completely indifferent. So, it's like kind of the cruel ironies of the world, but that's the thing is like, you got to find your angle, right? And some people have a better shot than others. I mean, it's not that they don't use songwriters that are 50 years old. Nashville uses them all the time, but it's a much harder row to hoe than to be a younger person. Anyways, you had a question or something you're going to interject.
Well, I'll just add on to what you said here. There's a difference too between whether you're going to be the star, the talent, or if you're going to be a songwriter behind the scenes. Were you there? Correct. Were you there to? You said you were there to pitch some of your songs. Yeah. Is that how you eventually became a songwriter, not necessarily a performer?
Well, a songwriter is just anybody who writes a song. Like I mean, there's a difference between being a songwriter and being a published songwriter, or being like having some.
Okay. Well, is that how you became a working songwriter as opposed to a performer?
It actually wasn't. Nashville is an incredibly tough nut to crack. Incredibly tough. I did actually end up getting a song published, not at that particular thing. That one was a total bust for me. Actually, it was a bust for everyone except for that kid. That is not how I ended up getting some quote unquote commercial success. I actually used to go through a company called Taxi. And what they do is they're an independent A&R company. If you're not familiar with A&R, artists and repertoire, they're the people that choose music for the band. They have a lot of clout. And they're often the ones that sign bands. They sign new acts and they choose songs from songwriters for artists unless the artist writes their own music. They're very powerful people, and they are people who get paid well, and they are people who lose their jobs quickly. Because if you pick one wrong act and it doesn't pan out, then you get fired from that job. So they're very selective about who they want. It's hard to get in touch with them. But they exist in different forms, because there's the ones that sign acts and choose music for performing artists, and then there's music supervisors who are A&R after a fashion. They might dispute that, so I'll leave that a little bit out there. I'm not going to push that particular description too hard, but they're the ones that choose music for like TV shows and movies. That's a music supervisor. And so Taxi is an independent A&R company, and what they do is they take regular people like me and they hook you up with people who are in the industry. And you got to understand that there's if here's people in the industry and here's all the people that want to meet them, this group is very small and this group is very, very large. And so they put a giant wall in between them, as big of a wall as they can. These people do not want to talk to these people, because if they did, they would just be talking to them all day long. And like most people, like, oh, dude, I got all these songs, can you listen to them? It's like they don't have time for that. So they want screening. And Taxi was a screener for them.
Okay.
There's many, many ways to get in. It's not just them. I'm just using them as an example because it's what worked for me. But they would do songs for artists, and they would also do music for film and television. So I had both. I had songs that I had done that where I had, lyrics and melody, the whole nine yards, and pitch to artists. And I also had instrumentals. It probably comes as no surprise to you that instrumentals are a lot easier to get placed than, songs with artists. And the reason for that, especially now, this comes back to the technology thing. If you go back in time, there was a day when songwriters could write a song and you could get what was known as an album cut. And an album cut is exactly what it sounds like. It's just a song that is on the album that was not the single. So, you've got your favorite album and there's three singles and you love them to death. And then on the flip side of the cassette or the LP, there's that song right towards the end of the record that, maybe isn't as widely known, but it's a solid track, but it's not like their big hit, right? That's an album cut. Now, of course, everybody really wants the single. You can imagine how difficult it is to get the single because this is the song that represents the artist. This is the song that they're trying to make popular. So getting that is very, very, very hard, especially because guess who else wants that? Well, the artist wants that. And the label also wants that. Why do they want that? Because if you as a songwriter get your song placed on an album and the artist uses that as their single, guess who gets the money? The songwriter gets the money, right? Now, the artist is going to get from album sales, but the songwriter is going to get the writer's credit. You're going to get, like, when it's on the radio, you're getting the money. Well, the label doesn't like that, and the artist doesn't like that. They want the artist to get it. The artist obviously wants it because they want the money, and the label wants them to have the money because they're going to take the money from them. So it's very, 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 very difficult to get a song chosen as a songwriter. And it's even harder now because there are basically no more album cuts because nobody buys records, right? But if you have an instrumental, think about TV shows you watch, especially reality TV. Reality TV is very popular. And I'll complete transparency here. The overwhelming majority of my song placements in TV are in reality TV shows. And it's because it's the lowest bar. That doesn't mean there's no bar. It just means it's the lowest bar of the high bar.
When I think of reality TV, I think of like the dramatic music they play for every little thing. Or like if there's a clock ticking, there's a contest. Like, oh, they need to hurry up and get this meal done. Or there's a contest like of endurance if it's a Survivor kind of contest, etc.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Okay.
That's what's known as cue music. Okay. And so when you have reality TV shows or any kind of TV show, I mean, there's probably 15, 20, 30 songs per episode. They might not, they won't play the whole thing. It might be 10 seconds or 20 seconds or 30 seconds. But what they're looking for is music that enhances the atmosphere of the show without being intrusive. So they don't want singing in it because they need dialogue over it. Right. And so there's a million different things you can do to do that. And so I wrote a lot of music for that. And I got a lot of music placed with what's known as music libraries. They are a publisher as well, but they're a publisher of cue music. That's what they do. And then they go to all the big networks, and the big networks say, we need, we've got a horror, a TV show that's a horror, and we need scary music. And we want these kind of instruments in it, and we want, this kind of synthesizer, these kinds of drums, whatever. And so they go through their catalog, which can have hundreds of thousands of songs, and they find songs that they think are appropriate, and they send it to them. And if your song gets placed, then you get paid for it. So that was primarily what I did. I got a few other things too. But there's all sorts of opportunities. It's just very, very, very competitive. It's very competitive. And so you kind of have to be in a place where, like, if you want to do it, you have to understand that you are doing this because you love doing it and not because you're going to make money. Because guess what? You're not going to make money. You can.
You made a living. Did you make a living, or did you need like a B job or a day job or whatever?
What you would call it in today's parlance would be gig economy. It would be a gig job. So that was not my primary source of revenue. I did make money from it, but and you can. I mean, people do earn a living from it. I know people that do, but if you're going to do that, you have to be fully committed to what you're doing. I'll give you an example. I met a guy, and we're not friends, but I met him and I talked to him for about an hour. And he had the very good fortune of getting a song placed on Oprah Winfrey's show back when Oprah was, really hot, back in the day, right?
Or speaking
And
of
he,
a contrast between 1995 and
yeah,
2025, like
yeah.
people, yeah, like kids now wouldn't have any clue. They
They have no
maybe they
idea
might not
who
even know
Oprah is.
who Oprah is.
They probably don't. Yeah. But okay, she is a talk show host and an
Yeah,
incredibly insanely successful one. Probably
yeah,
the most successful one ever.
maybe.
Anyways, so Oprah, this guy ended up getting a song on her show, and her production team really liked it, and they said, "Can we get more?" And so this dude's like, "Sure." Well, what it happened to be at the time was that the type of music he was doing was not really in any music libraries. So this guy just started churning these things out. It was
Mm,
salsa music, and
mm,
and that just wasn't around. So he had no competitors. He was just
mm,
getting song after song after
mm-hmm,
song on
mm-hmm,
Oprah's show for a very
mm,
long period of time, for months. And he
mm,
was just making gangbusters
mm-hmm,
because he was the only one getting the music on there,
mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
Oprah was huge.
Yeah.
So he was getting the royalty. The royalties are, it's not a flat rate. It's not like they're like, here's $100. It depends on how much viewership there is,
Yeah.
what time of day it's played, how
Who
long the song
negotiates
is played
that?
for.
The A&R
Uh,
or the
yeah, not you.
yeah,
Not
yeah,
you.
not
Um,
you.
they
You need
they have a very
representation or
they
the
have a
the,
very
the
complex
middleman company.
formula. Yeah, kind of. You get the performance rights organizations like BMI and ASCAP, if you're familiar with them at all. I can talk about that a little bit if you want. But they're really the ones that do the formula, and they're the ones that set the standard. And there's no negotiating. Like, you don't argue with them. They just
I
tell you what
see.
it's going to be.
Yeah.
And they charge all of these different broadcast companies, whatever they are. So if it's, whether it's television or radio or internet or anything, they charge them a license fee every single year. And they take all that money and they put it in a big pot. And then they take all the music from that year that's been played in every single different possible venue you can think of, television, whatever, and they do their formula. They've got their little
Mm-hmm.
formula, and they say, okay, this person had a song for 1 minute on The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead is a primetime television show. It had
Mm-hmm.
this many viewers. This
Mm-hmm.
person, or the
Wow.
writer and their publisher is getting $2,000. And then they take some other thing. They go, this person had a song for 10 seconds on some reality TV show that nobody's ever heard of that plays at 2 in the morning in Brazil. This person is getting 20 cents.
Right.
It's
Right.
not, there's not one amount you get paid. So you can make a ton of money or you can make
Yeah.
no money.
So this is
So,
it's sort of like maybe in today's or at least in my world having a YouTube channel it reminds me of that where you can make a lot of money on
hmm
YouTube, but most people don't
hmm
make much at all.
exactly.
And
It's
and if
just
you
like
bust
that.
your ass, you
hmm
probably will. You can get a nice
hmm
little channel, but it probably won't. You won't make enough money probably to live on it. So you'll need
Yes.
another source of income.
Yeah.
Um,
I love
but
that
it's wide
analogy
open.
because that's exactly right.
Yeah,
It's exactly the same. Exactly the
yeah. A
same.
few people hit it big, and
hmm
um,
But there's very few that do. But you
right.
can do it. You just got to be completely all in on it. You got to be willing to work 60 hours a week. The,
Yeah.
the thing with these people, like when people are really successful at that, is that the turnaround time for television is incredibly fast. I mean, like a day or two max. So like they'll say, we want, music in this style. Do any of your writers have it? That's the production crew talking to the music library, and so the music library goes to all their people that they know of that do X, Y, and Z, and they say, "Hey,
Hmm.
they're looking for this thing. Can you get me something?" And that person is up at 7 a.m. and they say, "I'll have you something by the end of the day." They write the
Hmm.
music, they record it, they
Hmm.
produce it, they edit it, and they're done at 5 o'clock, and they send that bad boy over. You got to bang, 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 bang that
Wow.
out. And that does not mean they will take your song. It just
Yeah.
means that
Right.
you have a shot at it.
Yeah.
So you
It's like,
send it over.
boy,
Yeah,
that's a lot
yeah,
of
it's
work just for a
brutal. It's
chance.
brutal. It is very brutal. And that's why I say, like, you can do it, but man, you're going to hustle. And it never stops. It's always like that. So, like you really got to be committed. But what happens is it's the snowball effect. So you get a song on a television show
Hmm.
and, maybe it pays you $10, right? but it pays you $10 every quarter because that's how often you get paid. And then when the show goes off the air in the United States, guess what? It gets syndicated and they send it to the rest of the world. So now it gets played in France and Spain and Brazil. Well, guess what? You're making less money, but you're still getting paid. So now you're getting $5 a quarter. Okay. And then it gets syndicated again and it goes to Singapore and it goes to Ecuador. And now you're getting paid less, but you're still getting paid. Now you're getting paid $2 a quarter. Okay, that's chump change. Well, what happens if you have 1,000 of those? And there are people that do. You know, if you write a song every day, or 2 songs every day, and you get them out in the libraries and you do this for 5 years, you've got hundreds, if not thousands of songs out there. If you get 500, 600, 700 songs in rotation and they're all paying you $10, I mean, it's not
like,
insane
it's like selling
money.
insurance.
Yeah. You know,
where you
once in a
sell enough
while-
policies and you get paid residuals on those policies.
Right.
Then by the time you're 55, you can have a ton of business out there that people keep renewing. And yes, some will
Exactly.
fall off, but
Yes.
most will just keep renewing their insurance policy, and you get paid a couple bucks every time, and you got a bunch of people doing that. Suddenly, you got a retirement income.
And that's exactly right. And again, a great
Yeah.
analogy on your part. And that is what happens. And then also what happens is that once in a while you get really lucky and you get an awesome placement. I have a friend that got her song placed on an episode of The Kardashians, and she got $2,000 from that. Bam, right off the top. That was up front. That wasn't counting her residuals. You know, that's a hard placement to get, you know, but like, hey, not bad, right? I mean, who wouldn't want that? So you're going to get those periodically where you get those big paydays, you know, and then most of them are going to be you kind of grind it out. But to your point about getting paid, you know, with the residuals, I mean, I have songs that were placed 15 years ago. I'm still getting paid for them. I still get money from them.
What about
You know,
what
so-
about like if your band? I forgot the name of the band that sings that song "I'll Be There for You," the theme song of Friends.
Oh yeah. That's a really interesting case. But go on.
Well, so if that case is an anomaly, we don't have to use it. But any time, like how about Primus, Les Claypool? You know,
Yeah.
he does the South Park
South
jingle.
Park, yeah.
Like,
He probably
do
makes
they get paid
quintillions
every
of dollars.
time?
Oh yeah. Yeah, he probably
Yeah.
makes absolute metric a lot
Yeah.
of money. A lot. The
Yeah.
I'll Be There for You is a really interesting thing because like they didn't even like that song.
The
And
band
it
or
ended up getting
the show?
Yeah, they didn't the band didn't even
Oh.
like the song. But they ended up using it and it ended up, you know, that show was just an absolute, you know, cultural phenomenon. It was so popular. I imagine they got paid unbelievable sums of millions of dollars over
Yeah.
the course of that show easily.
Yeah.
I don't know what they got paid, but like that is a prime time show.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a song with lyrics. It went on for whatever 30 seconds every single time it got played. It's still in syndication. They're still making money
Right.
from it.
Right.
But that's a very, very unusual circumstance, and I'll tell
Yeah.
you why. They don't like for things like that to happen because what they want is they want an in-house composer to write the theme music for shows because they can pay that person a salary and then they own the song and nobody gets paid for it but
Yeah.
them. So that's a
Yeah.
very unusual case. You know, people will be sometimes like, you know, like, oh, have you ever had music on The Walking Dead? I'm like, good luck. You know, like you don't get to write theme songs. Most of the time, you don't get to write theme songs. It still happens, but they usually use in-house composers for that kind of stuff. And they use. Go ahead.
So like the music that you talked about, the cue music.
Yeah.
This is like generic. It's like what Wagner came up with, right? The leitmotif. Like I'm going to create music for my operas that denote the scene and the character, almost like the Imperial March for Star Wars, right? So
Yeah.
Darth Vader walks in, he's got that.
That's different though. That's film scoring. So.
Okay, but
Yeah.
I guess my point is that it's music that kind of sets the mood.
Yes, correct.
Right.
It's atmosphere. You would not
Yeah.
want something like Darth Vader, the Imperial March. You wouldn't want that for cue music because it's so memorable. It would be
Okay.
distracting. They don't want stuff that's distracting.
Okay. Then it's even more like, I guess where I'm getting at with this is it sounds to me like it's even a stronger case if it's not very memorable for AI music, AI generated music. And do you see AI, if I can introduce that topic, which why not?
Yeah, we should talk about that.
Um, um, it seems to me like that would be maybe an immediate use case for AI music for like that background stuff, the stuff that's not super catchy, super connected to a creator. Yeah, that AI could listen to a bunch of other stuff and then come up with something that
Sure.
works. Yeah, this is
Well,
scary music, and because
right,
it's in the
right, right,
background, because it's only creating a mood,
right.
it'll do, right? So, do you see that as sort of being maybe a foot in the door for AI?
Maybe, yeah.
If the unions allow it and all that, I don't know how that'll play out
Well,
politically, but
let me touch on your point first. Is that like you don't want it to be super memorable, but you don't want it to be boring either. So it's like
hmm
there's a middle zone there where they actually do want creative music. They just don't want it to distract from whatever is happening in the scene.
sure,
It's a very gray and nebulous area, but like if
yep,
you wrote really boring stuff, they wouldn't take it. They wouldn't
right,
want them. But to your point, let's talk about AI. We are getting into a topic that I do not know a lot about, and actually most people don't, right? Because it's literally happening. It's the new internet. It's happening right before us right now. So we might look back on this in a year or two and laugh at the silly things that we said.
mm,
But I'm getting so disclaimer, full disclosure here. I'm going to be speculating now because like I really don't know how this is going to go. Yeah, I think that the possibilities for AI are pretty amazing. I think it is going to become very powerful very quickly, probably more quickly than we want. And I think it's going to be really incredible in some ways and really horrible in others. My initial reaction to it when I first heard about it was one, I didn't believe it. I was like, oh yeah, there's no way this is gonna be able to, be as good as a person. Well, I think I've rapidly come to the conclusion that that is not correct. That it actually can, it does a pretty good job of mimicking, and it's getting better. And my other reaction was that I felt like, wow, this could either be an incredible tool or an unbelievable crutch.
hmm
And I think it's going to be both. I think for
hmm
some people, it'll be a crutch.
hmm
And for some people, it's going to be an amazing tool. And I didn't like it. And I still kind of don't like it. And the reason I don't, I know it makes me sound like an old man. The reason I don't is because, like, art is important to me. And
hmm
art more than a lot of things. I don't want to qualify it too hard and say more than anything, but more than a lot of things is a quintessentially human endeavor.
hmm
And if you think about like the art that you really love, it's meaningful, right? Like there's a lot of art out there that's not meaningful and we consume it and we forget it. But think about the songs that really matter to you, or the visual art that really matters to you, or the dance, or the poetry, or the book, or the movie. Like there's real human emotion there. And art usually, very often, not usually, very often comes from a place of pain. So some of the music that means the most to people is songs that speak to whatever that pain is. Well, you know what? I don't want artificial intelligence doing that. Like that feels wrong to me.
hmm
Like on a fundamental level, it's like, oh, the computer feels my pain. It's like, no, it
hmm
doesn't. Like it
hmm
cheapens it. It makes
hmm
it meaningless. And I don't like that. That bothers me.
artificial.
It feels very artificial and fake. On the other hand, humans have always
Yeah,
used
talk
tools.
more about that because the knee jerk reaction you get from influencers. Did you see that Rick Beato special on CBS Sunday Morning where he?
Yeah.
Okay, that's kind of the big viral one, and it went
hmm
mainstream because it was on CBS Sunday Morning. So even the older folks watched it who still watch CBS and all that. But
It,
um,
I love Rick Beato. He's amazing.
I do too. I'm a big fan
Yeah.
of his. His breakdown of songs and everything and
Yeah.
he's so good at
Yeah. Oh,
telling me what these chords are. And
yeah.
he introduced me to lingo that I had no idea even existed.
He's an
Uh,
amazing musician. He's a great guy.
yeah,
He's super smart. And
super
yeah, he's,
knowledgeable of all the
yeah. Oh
chords.
God,
And
yes.
oh no, that's actually a
Because
diminished
he's lived
fifth.
through it all. He's lived through it all.
True, just like
Like
you. Yeah, in a
like
sense. Yeah,
his
he's just a decade older, a couple,
right. His
whatever.
his age is an asset because like he lived through every one of those eras.
But he's
And
got
and,
but
and
he's got the energy of someone half his age. So it
indeed,
works really
indeed,
well.
yeah.
Um,
So as a tool, we're talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah. Well, whether it's his spotlight on AI and music or just any number of others I've seen on social media, the knee-jerk reaction is this sucks. It's ringing the alarm. Now, you can ring the alarm about calculators and say, well, it's a crutch. Now,
Yep,
but it's
it
also
is.
obviously a tool, and it's
Yeah,
helped us go to the moon and so forth.
indeed.
So, give us the tool argument for AI. How do you see it being helpful in creative people becoming more so?
And I actually had to think about that again, like I thought about this interview before we did it because like I just was very curmudgeonly initially and I was just like, I hate this stupid thing, I'm not going to do
Mm-hmm.
it. And I didn't use it for a while and then I did. Then I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot. I'll give Chat GPT a shot and all that stuff. So before I answer the question, I'm gonna touch on how I think it could be a crutch. All right. So let's imagine that you have a person like you have the Rick Beato thing where he does all these inputs and tells it to make this completely fake artist with a fake song and doesn't add any music to it and it comes up with something and it's like, wow, that sounds real, right? It sounds legit. I think what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of people that really have no talent and have no business, quote unquote, being artists, not trying to be a snob, but like, going like, okay, Chat GPT, I want you to write a song in this style with this kind of singing, blah, 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 and include the line, I love you. And all of a sudden they're a songwriter. And it's like, well, are you? It's like, well, I contributed a lyric. It's like that anyone and their uncle could have. You know what I'm saying? So I think you're going to see that. And I don't like that. And I think there's a legal discussion to have here too. Like, how do you copyright music
Mm-hmm.
that you didn't actually write? So I'm gonna go to answer your actual question and not get sidelined here, and I'll answer that one at the same time. So the way it's a tool, I just had this discussion with. Very sorry about that. Sorry. I just had this discussion with some of my co-writers that I used to write with because one of the things that is a perpetual problem for people who are songwriters and they're trying to pitch their songs is it's really expensive. So, like, I play guitar. I'm not a singer.
Mm-hmm.
My co-writers are lyricists. They're not necessarily. None of them are singers either.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to do a demo for an artist, one of the things you run into is that you got to have a singer. Well, guess
Mm-hmm.
what? Good singers cost money, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is their job. This is their craft. This is their
Yeah.
talent. They get paid too. So without going into great detail, if you want to do like a pop demo, it's like $1,000 to $2,000. It's very expensive. That's like a $2,000 lottery ticket,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what we started talking about is, like, and this is the part where it gets a little hard because it's like, we're artists and the singer is an artist and the drummer is an artist. We're all artists. So like we understand, this is your job. Like I don't begrudge them earning a living. I don't begrudge paying them, but it just gets very expensive. But
Mm-hmm.
it's like, what is to stop us from taking our songs and having AI put a modern spin on them? And the answer is nothing. Like I don't have
Yeah.
to go spend $1,000 to have my song done in a contemporary fashion. I just plug it into AI and I say, give me current production of this song and have the singer sound like X. I mean, do you know how many possibilities there are that we can do with our song now? Like exponentially more than before. Because you will very often, this comes as a surprise to people sometimes, but like they hear a song on the radio and they're like, oh, this is brand new. If they actually knew, a lot of those songs are from like 10 years ago or 15 years ago, and somebody wrote this song and they just pitched it over and over and over and over.
Mm.
And finally, some artist took it and they put contemporary production on it, but it's not a new song at all. It's a decade
Mm.
old. But you, as the
Mm-hmm.
listener, listening to the radio, you don't even know that. Well, we have a lot of songs too that were never used. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like periodically every 3, 4, or 5 years, we want to go back and put contemporary production on it, because things change. And every time it costs you another grand, it costs you another 2 grand, right? But now it doesn't have to because AI can do it for
Right.
us, right?
Right. Right.
Or
Well, it
here's another
reminds me
thing.
of a drum machine.
Yeah, it kind of is. And I was going to say that because virtual studio instruments have been a thing for decades. I've used them, and I'm a rock guy, so I always want organic sounds. But like when I'm making the demo version, like I will have fake drums, then I do guitar, I do bass, and then I have my horrible, horrible singing. And then I find a singer, and then I find a drummer, and I do the guitar and bass. But it
Let's
all
get a
it
let's
is
get a. Can you sing a little right now? I want to hear this
no,
horrible voice of
absolutely
yours.
not. I will not embarrass myself that way. But the point is that like
Sing
what
sing
it
them. Sing some
what?
Marshall Tucker.
No, 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 no. I'm not singing.
Heard it in a love
So you are
song.
way better than me.
Remember that
Um,
song?
I kind of, yeah, yeah, yeah. But
Heard it in a love song.
so here's something that I've thought of. Like, here's how it can be used as a tool as well. Why can I not make
Hmm.
like do a demo like I normally do, right?
Hmm.
I write the music. I'm playing the guitar, I'm playing the
Yep.
bass. I put in my fake chintzy, keyboard program drums. I put in my horrible vocals, and then I plug that into AI and I say, I want you to have a singer like Chris Cornell, and I want a
Hmm.
drummer like Danny Carey. Okay, now I'm making some stuff
Hmm.
up here, but and it does that.
Super
Well,
group.
is it my song? I would argue that yes, it is because
Yeah.
I wrote the music for it. I didn't have
Right.
AI generate the music. I wrote it, but the voice is fake. The drums are
Yep.
fake. But
Right.
I mean, look at rap music, right? Like rap music, all of that is quote unquote fake, like it's all like beeps and bloops and production and all that. So
It's samples too, often
it's
of music
samples,
that's already
right?
been written. They pay for the sample, but yeah.
They can, yeah. And when I say fake, I'm not trying to disparage rap here. So rap fans, please don't yell at me. I just mean that it's very produced. It's not
Sure.
organic music. It's not from actual instruments a lot of the time. So,
Right, but they
but
still come up with the hook and
yeah, the beats and the
the
lyrics and all
lyrics.
that. Sure,
Yeah,
of
yeah.
course, of course.
Um,
So that's the tool. That's the way I see it being used as a tool that is non-offensive, so to speak, to me. But
I think if the creator comes up with the vision.
right,
Okay, so have you seen some of these videos, these AI videos?
sometimes, yeah, yeah, some of them, yeah,
I've seen some pretty ornate ones,
yeah.
and when you look at the prompt, it wasn't as if they said, "Hey AI, make me a video of a monster movie." Now that's what I think some people think happened
Hmm.
because that's what Rick Beato did for that pop
Hmm.
star.
Hmm.
Create a pop star and a pop song,
Hmm.
boom. But what these video creators are doing is they're being very minute with every single prompt.
Hmm.
But rather than having to pay a graphic designer fifty
Right,
thousand dollars to create
right,
this 3-4 minute film,
right.
they can prompt it in specifically as they're describing it in words what they see in their mind. Like, okay, now I
Right.
want this camera angle to go like this. So it's just like a
Yep,
director.
yep.
I want the
I was just saying
camera.
it's
I
like a
want the sun to be
director.
setting. I want this
Mhm.
and this. Only I don't have to wait for an actual sunset. I don't have
Yep.
to have an actual expensive camera on a
Right.
boom or whatever. And so you tell AI what to do, and it can produce it, but it's still your vision coming to
Hmm.
life. I think music can take that same
Hmm.
path, good
Yep.
music, and by
Yep.
good like original music. See,
Right.
everything I've seen from AI, music wise, I've never heard a song that's like stop me in my track. This is really getting to me. This is beautiful. This is catchy. This is really good. I'm yet to hear an AI song that does that. I think AI will help create awesome music from those who have the
Right.
spark, the idea, the core idea, and then AI can embellish that.
And I agree with you. I mean, it's because it's derivative. It's not creative. It's just drawing from things that it has learned from
Hmm.
human creators.
It
But
sounds generic to me.
that's today. Wait 5 years. What? I mean, I don't know. I'm not a science guy. I'm not a programmer. I don't know how close we are to true artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
But if you had something that was self-aware, how do I know it's not going to be creative? How do I know it's not going to be as good as a person or better? I don't. Maybe not. That could just be
It
silly.
just feels like every amazing song I've heard has been so not completely original, of course, because artists steal,
Of course,
steal like an
we all
artist.
yeah we all
We
learn
all
from
borrow.
others. Yeah.
Um, but I don't know. That would be just a huge leap that I'm yet to see any evidence of for at least AI music. I've seen
So
some great
far.
visuals and stuff, but
Yeah, I guess I've heard some AI stuff that I wouldn't consider terrible. I mean, I would call it derivative, but I wouldn't consider
Mm,
it terrible. And I think in 5 years it'll be a lot more impressive.
mm,
I'm making up that number, obviously, but that's what I'm saying. Like, if you look at like take video games, right? Like if you look at modern video games, and I don't know how games are made. I'm not a programmer, but you know, they're using modeled stuff, right? Like, they do these models, 3D models, and it's like, would you say that this person's not creative just because like you're using computer technology to generate models? Well, no, you're not going to say that. And as
mm.
you noted, it's like this person is putting these prompts in, but they're acting like a director, they're acting like a
Right,
screenwriter. So
right,
really, it's no different for a musician. Like if you play an instrument or you write a song or whatever, there's nothing wrong with using that technology.
right.
Again, what I'm afraid of is that it's going to become a crutch for a lot of people in the same way that like auto tune became like a crutch, right? Like the
Yeah,
purpose of auto tune was to take an otherwise stellar performance and there's one mistake and they just tweak that little mistake and they
right,
fix it so you
right.
don't have to re-record the whole
It's
thing.
it's airbrushing.
Yeah, it's airbrushing. But then what happened is a lot of people who really didn't have any business being singers kind of
Hmm.
got to be singers
Sure,
because they could,
sure.
and so I think it has you know, uh, um, it can be used for that as well. I think,
Yeah.
on the legal front, it's going to be really interesting to see how they deal with this because, copyright and trademark law are pretty well established at this point. And I can talk about copyright law if you care. But, you know, I don't know how it's going to work if you have an open source AI generating stuff for you. Can you call that your work and can you copyright that?
I've actually through the blockchain organization I help run. We've had a law firm sponsor us, and they're a intellectual property. That's
Okay.
their boutique IP law firm,
Okay.
and they've given talks about this at our events. And
Okay.
if AI creates it, it's not copyrightable.
Okay. Okay. But what if hypothetical then? Let's say that I write the song and I play the guitar
Mm.
parts and I play the bass parts and it's my
Yep.
lyrics and my melody, but it's an AI vocalist and an AI drummer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I
That's what
copyright that?
I think that's what they're teasing out.
Right.
Yeah,
So
because
I
it
would
gets
say,
very gray, especially when
right,
AI is used in Microsoft Word
right.
when it might suggest the end of a sentence.
Yeah, yeah,
So
right.
I wrote the screenplay.
Oh,
I wrote
oh,
the article for the magazine.
yeah.
But was AI helpful in detecting or filling out my sentences? It auto predicted accurately. Well, yeah, I did.
Hmm.
So yeah, they have to. It's tricky,
It is tricky.
like a
It'll be
lot of things.
interesting. It'll be interesting to see how they parse that out. So in some ways it might be quote unquote dangerous to use AI because now you're
Yeah.
putting your ideas out there. You're putting your ideas out there for other people to take. And you're training AI on your ideas. Like what if you come up with something awesome and now AI has it and
Mm,
somehow someone else accesses that directly or
mm,
indirectly and they're like, "Oh, this is great." And then all of a sudden they get the credit for it, and
mm.
it's your idea. So
I guess I don't understand all those mechanisms, but
and nor do I. And so I'm like I said earlier, I'm kind of speculating here a little bit. I'm not a programmer at all, so I don't know all the ins and outs, and I don't know what the limitations of this the software is. I'm just trying to think of it from the perspective of a creator. How can you use this tool to your
yeah.
advantage, but still have the ability to justifiably, honorably, honestly say, this is actually my work, right?
What's to stop the video game maker or the reality show producer or the B movie made for TV movie director producer from using AI music if it's good enough for setting the mood for the scene?
I don't think there's anything stopping them. And I think that's
Yeah,
very likely that will happen.
yeah.
You know, one of the things that has happened in the past, this is not new, and still happens, is that a lot of times, because these different companies, the television companies, um, they pay so much money in licensing fees, and they don't like
Hmm.
that, of course. and they want to recapture that. So
Mm-hmm.
they will oftentimes directly or indirectly buy music libraries. And so in
Mm-hmm.
essence, what happens is they pay money into the performance rights organizations, and those PROs turn around and pay money right back to the TV company because like they own the rights to the music, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Mm-hmm.
like they just recapture the money
Mm.
because now they're the publisher, right? And they'll do things. This happened to me once, and it really pissed me off. But some company bought the library, and then they came to us and said, "Well, um, I'm getting deep into IP law here, but you've got a publisher side and you've got a writer side, and it's 50-50. So you write the song, and then the publisher owns half of it. You own
Mm-hmm.
the writing side, but like if you get paid $100, they get 50, you get 50. Well, they came to all the writers and they said, we're the publisher now, so we own the publisher's share, but we want you to sign over half your writer's share to us too. And if you do, we'll give you priority
Mm.
for the TV shows. And if you don't, then you go to the back of the line. And, I'm sure a lot of people did that. And I was like, no, you already get your half. You are not taking half of my half. Like I just refused to do it. So I got sent to the back of the line and they didn't use my music. But they'll
Mm.
do things like that. I'll refrain from using profanity here to tell you how I really feel about it. But there's a lot of tricky things you can do that are totally legal that are really, in my opinion, very dishonorable. And I'm sure we'll see a lot of that with AI stuff too. Because, like you said, there's no reason not to, right? Like, if you
Mm-hmm.
have an in house composer, you could just tell your in house composer, hey, create 1,000, little pieces of cue music that are, derivatives of this song that you wrote for us while in our employ. And then that's part of their library, and they prioritize that because they own the rights to it, right? Depending on how the IP pans out for all this, like you said, like that boutique IP law firm,
Yeah. Yeah.
it depends on how it pans out. But if they decide that people can copyright this stuff, I mean, that seems like an existential threat to people who write, cue music for a living, um, among
Um.
other things.
So I'm starting to see a picture here where, first there was streaming. Well, first maybe there was piracy of Napster,
Hmm.
and then there was just selling songs rather than albums, like with iTunes,
Hmm.
and then and then there was streaming when internet speeds were fast enough, so everyone just listened to it on YouTube or Spotify. Um, and I don't know, maybe social media played into this some, but now with AI, it feels like this is just one more reason why artists need to rely on performing. Because while streaming doesn't pay well and they're not selling albums anymore, now another reason for them to perform live and lean on that is because AI can't reproduce a live show.
Yeah.
So it feels like another reason why artists will lean on that. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it is true. Like, if you are a successful enough band, you can make money from live performances. I think the real money, from my understanding, and I might be outdated on this, I think the real money is in merchandise. It's in selling like
Hmm.
t-shirts and all the tchotchkes and all that stuff, because it's very expensive to tour, extremely expensive.
Hmm.
Especially if you have a show with a big production and all that kind of stuff. Again, this is, where a singer-songwriter has an advantage because it's just them, or
Yeah.
they can pay people as, guns for hire rather than being full band members, quote unquote, with
Yeah.
more rights. Yeah, I think live performance does matter because people are going to want to see other people performing. However, it did occur to me, and I could be wrong about this, sheer speculation, but what is to stop a record label, just as maybe even as a novelty, from creating, we see a lot of these like teen bands, like the boy bands or the girl bands or whatever. There was a period of time, not so much anymore, but like, the Mouseketeers were like the gateway to pop stardom, right? Like you saw all these girls that used to be Mouseketeers, like Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera, and then they went on to have these careers. I think, I want to say maybe Sabrina Carpenter. Don't quote me on that one. But there's a lot of them. And, what is to stop these labels from creating a completely artificial person, like a fake human being, but not lying about it, not pretending, just saying, but like then having that teenage girl grow up with the audience, right? Or like teenage
Sure.
boy, right? So instead of Justin
Sure.
Bieber, he's 13 years old, he's singing his songs, and he's still a successful artist, now he's whatever age he is, 30 something. And he, like, his audience grew up with him, right? What is to stop them from having a completely fictitious person grow up with their
Mm-hmm.
audience and
Mm-hmm.
be like put on these big productions where you go to the concert, but it's not an actual person. It's just like some kind of projection. I'll call it a
Sure.
hologram, and
Yeah.
it puts on a show, but it's not actually a
Yeah.
person, right? It's a fake band putting on a real show, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I
sure
don't
it
I
does.
don't
I mean,
see any reason.
people have already fallen in love with their AI
Hmm.
partners, right? So,
Right, right. I mean,
yeah,
that might
I
not be realistic
suppose.
today, but wait 5 years, wait 10 years, So, and just think of that. If you're a record label and you could make that popular, my God, this is a dream come true, right? Because your AI artist doesn't need to get paid, doesn't get in a bad mood, doesn't do
Mm-hmm.
drugs, doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
crash and burn like so many of them
Mm-hmm.
do, uh,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't ever get upset, doesn't demand,
Mm-hmm.
ownership of their catalog.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing. Like, you just own it and you can turn it off whenever you want and you just get all the money, So if they could make that successful, or here's another one. Why not do that with movies, right? Instead of having
Sure.
a big star like Tom Cruise or whoever, Hugh Jackman, why not just have an AI star who
Yeah.
doesn't ever age, never
Yeah.
ages? You don't have to pay them, you know? Like, if they
Mm-hmm.
can make that something that people
Mm-hmm.
accept, which
Mm-hmm.
I think is entirely plausible, at least possible,
Well,
why
maybe
wouldn't you do it?
theater. Maybe theater will become more popular again
Yeah, yeah.
outside of Broadway.
Right, right, right. So, I mean, these are just thoughts and speculations. I don't know that any of that stuff will
The
happen, but
dystopian view is that this will take over and it will displace. But I don't everything. But I don't think that's realistic because, um, like everyone complaining about it doesn't want it, and so why would it take over if all of these people are complaining about it and don't want it? Like, if there's this much pushback, then that means you would prefer a real person, yes? And they all say yes. Okay, there's the market. Like, you are demonstrating a sizable market that doesn't want the AI stuff, and it's not going away, right? The demand or the desire for the human.
for now, yeah.
Yeah.
Let me play devil's advocate here for a minute. How many times in your life have you heard someone, maybe even yourself, say, "Oh, I hate major corporations. I hate Walmart. I hate Amazon. I hate Microsoft," and yet you still buy things from them, don't you?
I've
Right?
never said that about those corporations.
But many
I
people
don't,
do. Many people do, right? They'll say like,
they
"Oh,
feel forced into it because those are monopolistic.
yes, but
Um,
as you noted, you don't have to shop there. Nobody is making you shop there, but people do because it's convenient and it's easy, and that is why
sure.
they're so successful. My point in this is just that, like, people might say, "Oh, I don't like AI, I don't like this, I don't like that," but if it makes life easier for them, they're probably going to do it.
I
I
don't
guess
know.
we'll
I
find
mean,
out.
I go to kind of the traditional view that AI doesn't have a soul, and
Right.
that this great music that I loved, and that we don't see a lot of anymore, and that's part of the problem too. AI is my hope. I hope AI is the tech that helps get us back. Ironically, people that say AI is taking all the soul out of music, I'm hoping that the soulful creators can use it to get their music up and above the rest. It could be the spark that helps the industry, that helps music get to where it was as we remember it in the 90s. You know, think of a song like Pearl Jam's Black.
Right.
That is a now I know it's subjective, but my God, that is an incredible pop song.
Sure.
That is a heartfelt,
Let me
stop you in your tracks, get a tear in your eye. It is such a good
yeah, that
effing
whole record's
song.
awesome.
Like,
Um let me.
And we just don't hear music like that anymore. We don't hear
No,
original
I
pop
agree.
music like that anymore. And so my hope is that original creators with the power of the internet and these music tools, including AI, can maybe bust through this
It's definitely possible. Let me
this
interject
era that we're in.
a,
Yeah.
a dystopian perspective here. What makes you think that future generations will care if it's got soul, right? I mean, maybe that's something we care about.
Because they're human too.
They are, but like the younger generation has only grown up with technology. We had a period of time without it.
They
So maybe
love
it
the
won't
old
matter to them.
stuff. They
They
love
do.
the old stuff.
But yeah, I'm not saying this will happen. I'm saying that hypothetically down the road, there could be a time when people simply don't care, or when it's just like they view it differently. Like they're like,
That is
okay, this is stuff
dystopian.
created by people, and I like that, but I like this
Maybe you
thing
see
that's
that in your guitar students that they don't. They're a bit more
uh,
apathetic to.
what I see in them is that they
We should
when I
mention that too.
started.
That you teach guitar and you've been doing that for a long time.
Yeah, yeah. When I started, the kids that I would get as students were very much like I was when I started taking lessons. So when I started taking lessons, I walk in the door and I'm like, "These are my favorite bands. These are all the songs I want to learn. These are the solos I want to learn," and I could just rattle them off. It's like 10,000 miles long. And it was very much that way for a long time. My students would do the same thing. I love this band. I want to learn all these songs. I want to do this thing. That doesn't happen anymore. I ask kids now, I'm like, who's your favorite artist? Don't know. What's your favorite song? Don't know. They have no idea. It
They
doesn't.
don't know from their. They don't know good guitar music from their parents.
No, they don't. They don't know anything about any of it. Like they don't have a favorite artist. They don't have a
Then why are
favorite
they
song.
there with you?
I think because like they want to do an instrument, or their parents want them to do an instrument, but there's no. I very rarely see
Okay.
the kind of passion for a
Yeah.
band that like all of us, like our collective experience as Gen X, like we were very much defined by our musical tastes.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that was a huge part of your personality, was the kind of music you liked, and I don't see that anymore. My personal theory, and it is just a theory, is that Instagram and YouTube and TikTok have replaced rock stars, and that's what kids look up to now. Is they look at those people are the rock stars, so they don't care so much about artists and music because it's like it's just not a focal point like it was. They have we had relatively limited numbers of entertainment options, but they have unlimited. So it's just not as important culturally as it once was. Which doesn't mean they don't like music, but like if I asked them to name me, their 10 favorite songs, I would be shocked if any of them could do it.
It's
Like
just well, their peers aren't making. You said earlier that we like music that's created by our peers or maybe 10 years older than us,
yeah,
like I did. Like, so when I was a
yep,
teenager, I liked grunge, and all
yep,
those bands were late 20s, mid 20s,
yep,
whatever. Um, there aren't a lot of those rock stars or
right.
pop stars, perhaps. The touring ones we see are all 30s,
Legacy.
40s. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, Beyonce is probably 40 by now. I don't know.
Yeah, legacy
Um,
artists. Yeah.
yeah, I guess so. Even Taylor Swift could perhaps be a legacy artist at this
Hmm.
point, pushing 40 herself.
Hmm. Yeah.
Another example I'll give you, though, is that I have a friend who's got a couple of teenage sons, and they play hockey, his sons. And I said, boy, what do they play in the locker room? And my friend Max says to me, you know what they play? They play Metallica.
that
They
that
play this. They play AC/DC. They play
that
the
warms
stuff
my
I
heart.
used to play when I was their age in the locker
Yeah,
room, getting ready for a hockey game.
that's great.
Because there is, right? I don't know. There hasn't been anything like that in the last 15
There,
years, I guess.
there's a whole that's a whole nother discussion about why is there no more rock music, and which I can touch on briefly if you care.
Go for it.
Um, okay, I'll try to keep it short. I know I've been talking a lot. Um, Dave Ellefson, who's the former bass player of Megadeth, I've read a lot of interviews with him about this, and I agree with his opinion on this. He is not the only one who has talked about this. There's been other people, but that's primarily where I've gotten, sort of the perspective insight on. And so there's sort of a general belief that like, oh, well, rock music must just not be popular anymore. It's not actually true. What it is that you can't make money doing it. So touring is very expensive, and the thing about being a rock musician is they're very DIY, right? Do it yourself. And so a
Mm-hmm.
rock band will have 4 or 5 people in it because it's all
Yeah.
organic music. There's no computers, right?
And
Well,
and they write their own music,
yes,
unlike like
yes.
what you said, where in
Do you,
Nashville there's a lot of songwriters creating music
yes,
for country
yes.
stars. They don't do that.
So
Touch on that for like 2 seconds, if you would.
I'll come
When
back
you
to
when
that
you
in a minute.
talk,
Yeah,
okay, okay,
hold that thought. Hold that thought.
yep,
So imagine that you're in a band with 4 or 5 people and you're touring around and like the price of touring has just exploded after COVID. You
yeah,
can't make money doing that. You can't pay 5 people to do that. Like they can't survive.
okay,
So it's not that people don't like rock, it's that there's no money in it, nobody's willing to do it, and there's no labels willing to sign them because they don't want to spend that kind of money on them. So people still like rock and roll just fine. It's just that
okay,
there's not none, but there's a lot less of it floating around. Again, this is not words coming out of my mouth. This is a guy who is a legit rock star, who has lived the life and been through it and saying like this is what's happening. And I've heard other musicians say the same thing. Like they reaffirm that. But what was your question then about Nashville? The
Well,
songwriter thing?
you talked about songwriters making music
Yeah.
for acts for different
Oh
musical
yeah, yeah,
acts.
yeah, yeah.
But you weren't writing songs for Soundgarden and Stone Temple Pilots.
Absolutely not.
You're writing like the Nashville songwriters are writing songs for Kenny Chesney and
Yes, right.
Toby
Rock
Keith or
bands
whatever.
rock bands will take songwriters material, but very, very rarely. And it's more
Hmm.
of the poppy ones, like Bon Jovi or Aerosmith would be
Oh,
examples.
okay.
Metallica or Soundgarden, never in a million years. Like that, no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, rock is an interesting genre, and I'm being very broad when I use the term rock because it encompasses a lot of artists, but it is one of the very few, it's the anomaly. Like if you're a rock guy, you think, oh, everyone writes their own music, but actually they're the anomaly. Like
Hmm.
whether it's country, jazz, blues, pop, all of those genres are absolutely dominated by songwriters and have been
Hmm.
forever. Like this is
Hmm.
not new. Like it's more common for artists to have songwriters than for the artist
Hmm.
to write for themselves. That doesn't
Hmm.
mean the artist is never involved. Like you can't just
Hmm.
write a song and shove it down their throat. Like they're not going to
Hmm.
accept that. It has to be a song that they care about, they're interested in.
I was surprised to
And
learn that because I always liked rock for primarily growing up,
yeah,
and my dad did, and on the back of a Led Zeppelin or a Beatles album, it'll say who wrote the song,
yeah,
Lennon McCartney or
yep,
Plant and
yep, yep.
Page or whatever. Um, but like the music artists I heard at the time, whether it's George Strait or Garth Brooks or
Mhm.
Clint Black, you think a lot of those songs were written for them?
A lot of times what will happen is that songwriters will work with the artist. Like they won't just like
Okay,
straight up write it. Like they will be in the room with them and there will
all
be,
right.
varying degrees of collaboration. So, not having done that myself, I'm very well aware of it and I know people who have done it. But, like it depends on the artist. Some people are actually very talented at writing, in addition
Mm-hmm.
to performing, and so the
Mm-hmm.
collaboration is a true collaboration. Others
Mm-hmm.
maybe not so much, and they might say like, well, what if we use the word the instead of and they still get
Mm-hmm.
credit for writing even though they didn't really
Mm-hmm.
write much. But yeah, it's not. I mean, there's many ways that it can happen. It can happen that a song is completely written and pitched to an artist and they love it so much they take it. But very often there's a relationship. And that's why, like in
Okay.
Nashville, like you have to live there, you have to be part of the community, and you have to go
Mm-hmm.
to the writers' nights, and you got to go to the song polls and the song circles, and you got to be there, be there, be there, be there. And if you do this for many, many years, you get to know people, and slowly but surely you work your way into the inner circle if you're good. And sooner or later, maybe you will be one of these people that gets to write with one of the artists. Maybe.
And in some genres, it's not even hidden. Like
Right.
they interviewed the guys who wrote Britney Spears' "Hit Me, Baby, One More
Yeah.
Time," and when it was like the 20th or 25th anniversary of that song, because that was a monumental song for
Yeah.
changing pop music at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
some are exclusively reliant on songwriters, and
I
some
guess
aren't.
the way I look at it, and I know no, a lot of people kind of recoil. They don't like the idea of a songwriter because it feels fake to them, and I understand that. And I totally get where they're coming from. But my rebuttal to that, and you can take my words with a grain of salt because I am a songwriter, so obviously I'm biased. Um, but it would be a little bit like if you were watching Mission Impossible and you're like, man, I just love this movie, and Tom Cruise is just so amazing. And then you find out that Tom Cruise didn't write the script. You're like, what?
Right.
What a loser. And
Yeah.
it's like, well,
Yeah.
no, that's
Yeah.
not his job. His job is to be
Right.
the actor. Like, he can't
Right.
be the
Right.
actor, the director, the writer, the everything. Some people are,
Mm-hmm.
like Clint Eastwood, right? But it's
Mm-hmm.
like some people, like, their skill is performance, and that is a
Right.
skill.
Right.
Some
Right.
people's skill
Right.
is singing, or whatever it is. Some people's skill is writing. I have met
Right.
like unbelievable hit songwriters, and if you saw them on the street, you would think it was some homeless guy.
Mm-hmm.
You would not
Mm-hmm.
think this dude wrote like a number one song, right? Like they don't look
Mm-hmm.
like rock stars or country stars. They
Mm-hmm.
look like regular people.
Kind of
And I
like
don't.
Rick Rubin is the big producer.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, I'm talking about like Nashville songwriters now, and I'm not
Mm-hmm.
trying to disparage anyone, but like really, truly, like if you saw them on the street, you would never in a billion years think this person wrote a number
Yeah.
one song,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so like that's the thing is that like I guess what bothers me in the songwriting world, I don't like it when it's dishonest. Country is
Yeah.
never dishonest. They don't lie about it. They don't pretend that the artist wrote the song when they didn't write the song. Like songwriters are given a lot of respect in that town,
Mm-hmm.
more than any other genre. Like you get a
Mm-hmm.
lot of respect as a songwriter in Nashville. What I don't like is the whole like the rise of the songwriter by committee thing, which you see a lot in pop music, where you look at a song and it's like there's 13 writers on it. You're like, how the hell is that possible? Here's how it's possible. The producer says, I want my name on the writer's credits. The producer's girlfriend complains that her name isn't on the writer's credits. The producer's girlfriend's son complains that his name isn't on the writer's credits. And pretty soon you've got all these people whose names shouldn't be on the credits getting credit because these people have power and you don't. So you've got the people who actually wrote the song, which are like two or
Mm-hmm.
three people, and then you got all these other idiots who really didn't do anything, but they're connected in some way, and they're like, take it or
Mm-hmm.
leave it, and so you take it because
Mm-hmm.
what are you going to do? That kind of shit. Sorry,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff makes me angry. So
I just thought of another theory as to why rock and roll isn't huge now. Have you heard about how young people, Gen Z, I suppose would be the right generation for this, who are young adults, late teens now. They don't drink as much, which
yeah,
on its face might look good.
yeah,
They're not as sexually active, which again on its face might not be so bad. Like, oh, okay, well maybe they're waiting, they're more traditional, blah blah blah. But they also don't drive less,
yeah, oh yeah. I've
and
encountered
and
that. Yeah,
they're not getting their license, and
yeah,
that baffles people
yeah.
like us because
Oh
we
yeah,
couldn't wait to get our
oh yeah.
license.
Absolutely,
I mean,
absolutely.
it was taught in school, and now they
Yeah,
have to take it outside of
yeah.
school. I mean, it was so in demand.
Hmm.
Where I grew up, like that was taught in school,
Yeah.
and we were like, I was like, I had to wait because I was a May birthday. I'm like, whatever.
Yeah, I
Um,
took my driver's test on my birthday.
right,
I couldn't wait.
exactly.
Yeah,
We couldn't wait, and we bought whatever POS car we could find
correct. Yeah.
that would get down the road and
Yep.
put in $6 of gas that we had in our piggy bank, and
Yep.
off we were. Um, which
Totally.
back then was probably four or 5 gallons, but
You're right, 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 right.
um, I don't know. COVID didn't help with this, and I just think the blasé nature of like a lot of the internet slop that is kind of drowned out the entertainment world, perhaps, and also like the what do they call that? Mind rot, doom scroll, not doom scroll,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
like
doom
mind rot
scrolling, yeah,
scrolling,
brain
just
rot,
like
brain rot. Yeah,
which I get engaged in myself from time to
yeah,
time. But if that's your main, watching someone play Minecraft for 3 hours, 4 hours, like I think there's a lack of, you know, yearning and kind of a lack of spirit in a way where
maybe,
you
yeah,
just it would be weird to see a teenager be like, remember Silverchair? They were like 15 years old and they're out there belting hit songs like they were
yeah,
25.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
even take an Alice in Chains or a Nirvana or Pearl Jam, and they were in rock bands in their teens before they hit it big in their
Hmm.
20s. Um, that means they were out there just,
Hmm.
you know, shredding that guitar, hitting those drums. There's a lot of passion there. Is
Hmm.
my point. And if you're belting out, you can't fake that. You really
No,
got to
yeah,
feel it from your soul to be able to belt out some high notes.
totally.
Um,
Yeah, I'm
I
not a
don't see.
sociologist, so I have my
Yeah,
speculations as to why that's the case. I know exactly what you're talking about, and I agree with you.
yeah.
But as to the
Well,
whys, I
your
mean,
students,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean,
There's just not the
it's not like
spark.
they don't like music. They do, but it's like in some ways it works great for me because they like look to me to like give them music. So I'm like, okay, no problem, and I just hook them up with my favorite stuff. And it's not like they don't enjoy it, and it's not like they don't learn it. It's just that the thing that always surprises me is they don't initiate it. They don't say, I love AC/DC or I love Van Halen or whatever, whatever it happens to be. Those are old bands, but whoever the new person is, they don't come in super
Well, there is
passionate
no
about
new
that.
there is no
There
new
is no
Van
new.
Halen or ACDs.
Right.
Do you and if there is, and someone's watching this and is like, hey, hold on, buddies, there are. They're just
Right. Right.
they're we've got, and I think this is true too. There are so many decentralized, fragmented communities
Yes.
out
Yeah.
there that I know there are talented artists. I know there's a
Hmm.
bunch of young talented guitar players.
There
I was
are. Yes.
introduced to a couple recently, and they're
Yep.
fantastic
Yep.
players. I don't know if they're writing anything that's very
Right.
soulful, but they're really technically amazing.
Yeah, like
Um,
Bernth is a good example, or Charles Bertu. Like those guys are amazing. They're incredible
yeah,
players. They're indie guys, and they make like little TikTok videos in YouTube, and like they'll just play these little things, and they're kind of like it's like a weird form of entertainment because they don't necessarily always have full songs. They'll just make like some little
you
comedic
know,
quip, and then they'll play like
yeah,
a little bass part or a guitar part, and then
yeah.
like that's their shtick, and then they'll go back and forth or whatever.
I actually considered this the other day. I was like, who cares what I was doing? The point, I thought of maybe the song itself will change.
Totally.
Like because you ever notice how, like in a TikTok or even a movie, they're not going to play the whole 4.5 minute song. They
Right.
play just the hook
Yep.
or just the part where it crescendos, just to get you excited for the big game that the movie's about.
Yeah.
Or for a TikTok, there'll be a short scene that lasts
Yep.
12 seconds, and so they'll just play that one riff of that
Right.
song that captures that mood.
Yep.
Maybe we're seeing like an evolution in how music is delivered, and
We might
whereas it
be.
went
Yeah.
from hymn and movement of a there were concertos and there were all of these different kinds of orchestral works, classical works, um, big band pieces,
Right.
which sort of lent itself to rock
Hmm.
and country, and those two kind of lent itself into the rock and roll song art form. But maybe the song will not be the way music is delivered in the
It
future.
it could be just that we'll end up with like choruses. Like, it'll just be
Yeah,
like a 30-second thing and it'll be the hook, it'll be the chorus and that will be the song is just that. Which I would hate that, but that could totally happen. I would really hate that if that happened.
kind of like how certain comedians are just one-liners, like Mitch
Yeah,
Hedberg.
right. Right. Right.
They
It's a
don't.
soundbite.
It's not a story. They don't have
Yeah.
to tell you a story. No, it's all just a soundbite. Yeah, right, right.
Yeah, I mean
Huh.
it's hard to say. Like everything does evolve, it doesn't stay the same. And I guess, like we lament that, frequently, but if everything stayed the same, it would get boring eventually. Like no matter how, at some point you
Yeah.
would hear enough iterations that you would be like, okay, I'm tired of this now. So I
We
guess it
just
kind of
we
has to
just when
change.
it comes to pop music, we just got to keep. Hans Zimmer's as big as ever.
Yeah.
He's
That's
taking
because he's
his
unbelievably
music
talented.
scores.
Yeah.
He's taking his music scores on the road, and so he's filling up stadiums. But when it comes to
Yeah.
pop, we'll just have to see what the young people continue to.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, there's always going to be people that are just like exceptional, like Zimmer is exceptional. So that doesn't surprise me at all.
Mhm.
But like not everybody is that unbelievable.
Well, sure.
Like they're that gifted. I think it'll be interesting to see too, like how badly this impacts literature. and I have a feeling it's
Mm,
not going to do it any favor because it's easier to fake that. Like it's like how can somebody prove that you used AI to write three-quarters of your book,
yeah.
right? Like it's such a solitary art. You write your book and then yeah, you go out and you do your book signings or you read your books, but it's not the same thing as like performing a song. Like how can you prove that somebody used AI to write their book?
Every AI integration is unique for the different art forms. Because I've
Yeah.
seen some visual art that I think is amazing that's
Yeah.
AI created.
Oh,
So I like
absolutely.
to keep music separate
Yeah.
because I think for the visual artist, it's actually
Yeah.
it's more challenging for them unless they're truly original with their
Yeah.
message and
Yeah.
idea for what to do. Like I've seen some visual art where the guy like takes the frame and he breaks the frame, excuse me, from depending on what's happening in the picture. So like if a boy has a bat and he's got a look on his face like, oh shoot, it's because the baseball broke the window
Right.
and the window is the glass in front
I've
of the
seen
picture
that. Yeah,
frame. You know
that is
that
really
kind of
cool.
original stuff like that. The
Yeah,
visual
yeah.
artist is fine, but
That's
like
really
graphic
cool.
design and stuff like that,
Yeah.
it's uh,
Yeah,
so
those
yeah.
people
There's all
might
kinds
be
of
out of a
art.
job for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Well,
how
anyway,
depressing would that be to become that good at that and then like have that taken away from you? That would be that's what I was saying. Like it's so sad because it's like, you empathize with your fellow artists and be like, this person's just struggling to make a living too. I don't want to take food out of their mouths, but at the same time, it's like I was saying, like the demos, it's like, well, now instead of saying I can only make a couple demos every couple
hmm
years because they're so expensive, I can make as many as I want because I just have AI do
yeah.
an iteration of it for free. You
Well, if
know?
you become a successful, and like in this particular case, like the graphic design thing is different. Maybe so is the literature and the poetry. I don't
Hmm.
know. But in sticking just with the music, if you use AI to help get your music out there,
Hmm.
you being a success is going to employ more people.
Yeah, and it is different too because and for people who are watching this who maybe don't understand what I mean when I say demo, um, a demo for an artist is basically a finished, polished song. It sounds like a
Yeah,
song you would hear on the radio, except that you will never hear it on the radio because what those people will do is take your song, dismantle it, and start from zero. So you're
yeah,
just giving them the song on a silver platter so they know what it
hmm
sounds like, but they absolutely will re-record it from
sure,
scratch. So even
sure,
if you use AI, it doesn't matter because they're just going to
yeah,
re-record it anyways.
right,
You're never
right,
going to
right.
hear the original version of it. So it's doesn't affect us at all, really.
I like that use of AI. I mean, it to me,
Yeah,
I always think of the person who lives in middle of nowhere, Minnesota, or middle of nowhere, North Dakota, and like they're in a small town, but they have the internet and they have some technology. They're not gonna find a trumpet player that they can
right.
hire.
Yep,
Either because they don't have the resources
yep,
monetarily, or the trumpet player has happened,
yep,
but they can use a synthesizer or they
yep.
can use AI vocals or whatever to help get themselves noticed, and then
Yes.
others will need to be hired along the way at this person's
I also
career.
think too, and this is just my opinion, but I think like transparency is important. Like don't lie, don't pretend.
Yeah.
Like if you're I think most people understand and would appreciate if you say, look, it's not ideal to use AI, but I'm a new artist and I don't have any money. And if you start getting successful and then you start
hmm
hiring real people, I don't think people are going to hold that against you.
No.
Joe Satriani, who's not necessarily a household name, but is my guitar hero, my personal guitar hero, and has had a career for 40 years. When he started, his first couple albums had drum machines on them, and it's so cheesy, and you can hear it, and it sounds cheesy and fake. But the dude had no money. What was he supposed to do? Like he's a new artist. He's trying to be
hmm
successful as an
hmm
instrumentalist, which is ridiculous, anyways. And he succeeded. But it's like, of course, he ended up hiring real musicians later on. But it's like he didn't really have the option. Like, where's he going to get the money for that? Like he's just trying to get his stuff out there. So I think if people are honest about that, it's when you start pulling the Milli Vanilli. I'm dating
Yeah.
myself here by saying
Yeah.
that, but when you pull the
Yeah.
Milli Vanilli, that's when people get mad. When
Right.
you pretend to be something you're not, or pretend you did
Yeah.
something you didn't.
Yeah.
So just own it and say, like, I used AI to create this, but I wrote the music, or I did the this, or I did the that. And it'll probably be accepted, I would think. Maybe I'm wrong.
Why do people listen to podcasts like Joe Rogan, especially that go
I
on for
love Joe
three
Rogan.
hours?
I
I do
you know
too. But like,
he was yeah.
if you took a transcript from one of his podcasts, the point I'm making is, if you took a transcript from one of his podcasts, put it into AI, said summarize this, then you would learn all the factoids,
Yeah.
insights, let's say he has an archaeologist on, and you'll learn all these cool facts like, oh wow, I
Yeah.
didn't know that. I didn't know
Yeah.
that King Tut did this or that, or the ancient Egyptians did this or that. Well, now you know, because AI. But you'd rather sit often, if you've got the time.
Right.
You'll sit and listen to the
Yeah.
interaction because you connect with the two.
Yes. Yeah.
So what I'm making a point of here is, like, even our conversation here in real time, I'm realizing that people may listen to the whole hour and a half that we've been talking
Yeah.
because it's a human connection,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
they've enjoyed being with us for the ride of
Yep.
this, for the duration of this, even if
Yeah.
there is information in there that they didn't particularly find interesting.
Yeah.
There was enough that they did, and there was an appeal to a connection with the people on the screen that they enjoyed that. So
Yeah.
I'm just making one more final point about the human connection and how, whether it's a live performance, theater, or music, or not live, but still, you're on screen, like in a podcast. I don't know if AI. I don't think AI will ever totally displace that.
Probably not. I think it'll just become one more tool. It'll become one
Sure.
more thing that people
Yeah.
use in one more aspect of our lives.
Yeah.
In the same way that we have cell phones, but we still have conversations. So, you know, hard to say. I mean, I guess we'll find out.
Yeah. Well,
The
thanks for
future's wide
presenting
open.
all these ideas from a
Yeah.
professional's perspective and sharing some insights from your experience in Nashville. That's pretty cool.
No problem. Yeah.
I'll have your, if you're fine with it, I'll have your, like, email and stuff in the, because I don't know, like, for people who are listening to this who live in the Twin Cities, Mike is a great guitar player, and he teaches. And are you looking for students?
Yeah, I have a few spots, but just a few.
Okay.
I'm
Well.
mostly full, but yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
All
So,
right. Well, that speaks to your talent and how good of a teacher you are, in addition to a musician, that you've got a lot of students. So thanks for sharing your insights and perspectives with this, and your thoughts, and bouncing them off with me during this time, so we could really
sure.
kind of flesh out this whole big music and AI matter, which we only scratched, but it was fun to scratch
Oh,
that itch.
I mean, you could talk forever about this,
Yeah.
and I was just a teeny 1% concerned that we wouldn't have enough to talk about, but it turns out that we had plenty to talk about, and we could go for
I'm sure
hours
you got
more.
100 Nashville
Yeah.
stories we didn't get to, so
Oh,
yeah, that's not an issue.
absolutely, absolutely. Actually, those aren't the funniest ones. I actually have a lot of funny stories, but yeah, no, Nashville's a wonderful town. I really
Mm.
do have very little bad to say about it. I could say a lot of bad things about the music industry. That I could say
Mm.
a lot of bad things about, but I really like Nashville as a city. So,
Mm.
anyways, so thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'll end on this note. I interviewed that Violetta Zeroni, that
Mm.
Italian woman who lives in Nashville, that's making a career selling her music as NFTs and then
Okay.
performing where her holders live. And so she's established, like, a small but dedicated following, like of
Yeah.
1,500 people or something. Don't quote me
Yeah.
on that number, but it's enough so that she has a decent audience wherever she goes, and yeah, she's just able to support herself doing that. And so I think that also speaks to, like, the alternative way that artists can sell
It's
their
always
work.
evolving,
And
and
yeah,
people find a way to get in the business, and then the minute they do, that door closes because it only works one or two times,
yeah,
and then it goes away as an opportunity. But, like, that's the thing, is like there's always a new one, right? Like, somebody is clever and creative, and they come up with they invent an opportunity for themselves.
yeah,
And then
Yeah.
a handful of other people can mimic that, and then it goes away, and then someone else has to iterate and come up with a new one. I want to say, and do not quote me on this, I want to say that Pitbull or one of those guys, I feel like it was him, but I might be wrong on that. The way he got his start was like he advertised on a billboard, and like he had
Mm.
like an independent advertising film, just like or firm, just do the advertisement for him rather than going through like a label. And that he was able to save a bunch of money by doing that, and so
Mm.
that's how he got started, and that's how he got his name out there. Don't quote me on
Mm.
that artist. I could be totally off base with that, but
Mm.
somebody somewhere I feel like I heard did that, and I was like, oh, that's a very clever idea. So there's a
And
million ways to
someone
do it.
and someone will use AI in a
Yes,
clever way that we haven't yet even
yes,
considered to make some
yep.
amazing music, I hope.
Or some amazing anything, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So
Well, thanks so much, Mike.
yeah,
Appreciate your time.
thank you.
All right.
Have a good one.